Hello, and welcome to I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here, where we are all allowed to be perfectly imperfect. I am Eileen Webb, a licensed psychologist, cognitive behavioral and EMDR therapist, podcaster, author of Perfectly Imperfect and Transformation Through the Power of Quotes. Hello and welcome. In this episode, I am joined by Suzie Cuthbertson, who is a life alignment and success coach. She is also co-founder of Illumina Coaching Institute. Suzie helps CEOs and business owners, leaders, to align with their emotional and energetic intelligence and master those so that they can build successful businesses. This is a fantastic episode. You'll learn a lot about yourself as well, and you can keep exploring. So welcome. We are really happy you're here. Suzie, welcome to our podcast. It's lovely to see you here.
Thank you for having me.
So usually we start by asking the question, what journey brought you here to where you are? What shaped your present time?
Of where I am right now. What a big question. Well, where I am right now. So I think my journey started probably at the age of 4 and 5, where I always knew I was going to do something that would help people. Always help people, always help people. And it's no wonder that I ended up in personal development. So I was in HR. I was obsessed with personal development. I was obsessed with learning about the human behavior. I studied workplace psychology. I became chartered in personal development, and I was coaching. I've been coaching since the past over 20 years.
It is shocking how long actually you have got in your life. I couldn't believe that when you first said that to me. I mean, did you start when you were 10?
No, I use really good cream. No, I actually was so lucky because I started off in retail, and I started off in retail in a very big department store, and I got promoted very quickly. I was promoted, I think, within 3 months of being there. And straight away, I was like put in charge of a team of 110 people. And a lot of these people were a lot older than me. We're talking 40, 45 years older than me at that point. And they put me on a leadership program, and then they put me on, so the leadership program led to being coach trained. And so I went on this journey not even having a clue, by the way, of what was ahead of me. But as soon as I understood the link or correlation between being able to coach someone in leadership and seeing the difference between people really wanting to get on board with your ideas, your vision, and everything else, well, that was kind of me. I kind of went off on that. In between that, I very much did retailing, but I also went off and studied, did my degree, kept being brought home, actually went off and majored in business finance, and then actually had a finance job lined up. And I remember doing a bit of experience there thinking, oh my God, like, this is so dry. This is so dry. Nobody's talking. Everybody's got their heads down. There's not much people management going on here. I don't think I can do this. What am I going to do? And then I got a call out of the blue. My ex-employees were like, we are going to be expanding massively. Will you come on board and help us? And it literally, I asked the universe, I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe I'm at this point where I'm going to have to turn this job down. What will people think, for a start? And I was in loads of student debt. And the call came, and I was like, yes. And so I went back into retail, and very much was in retail. Like, I was store manager, I was area manager. I went on to be like head of L&D, and then I went into kind of operations, and then went into being promoted, and eventually ended up as a HR director and a shareholder, because everything kept pulling me back to helping people. It's like, how can we make this better for people? How can we You know, I was always looking at how we could expand people and motivate people for the company, but actually for life. And so there I was. That's it. That was my kind of story up the ladder. And as I grew that, I started to become the go-to behind the closed doors for a lot of people, because I would never just look at it for the organization. I'd look at it holistically.
Exactly. It's not just workplace, is it?
It's never workplace. And if you want your people to excel and you want people to grow and you want people to expand, you've got to treat them like humans, and you look at the other aspects of what motivate them as well, not just the internal kind of workplace motivators. So I did that for 16 years. And then I got to a point, Eileen, where I was really burning myself out. Like, I had literally bent over backwards for people, was giving. And I didn't actually realize at this point how my high achievers wound was playing out. I didn't quite appreciate how my shadows, which I work with right on myself, but I work with on my clients now, which is a core piece that I do with them. I didn't realize how my shadows were actually playing out and actually enabling me to act in this way in my life and sabotage myself every day. And so I got to a point where two things were going on. One is I was burning myself out. So that was the surface level. And the second thing is my mission and values had changed, and they're no longer aligned with the organization that I was with. But I didn't understand this at the point. My burnout was just symptoms of that. I wasn't in alignment. And so
it's easy to get to a point of burnout when you're doing something that you love as well, isn't it? That you're helping people, and it's difficult to get to a point where it's like, no, to say no to helping people, and then you can easily burn out unless you are aware of, you have a lot more awareness within yourself of what's going on. So it sounds like that was quite a turning point for you of awareness.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge. And I think, oh, there's so much I'll say about looking back, but at that point, and this is for anyone listening that might be at this point, I had always thought my career was driven by me. I had always thought my career was like my following my love for people and fast-paced environments and everything else. And actually, I still love all these things. But what I hadn't quite realized is that actually a lot of that success, you know, getting to be a shareholder for a very large organization, a lot of that success actually had been driven on childhood wounds. And I had no idea. I was oblivious to this. And so, and you'll find this with a lot of high achievers, actually. Some of it's rooted and based in trauma. And so here I was at this point where I was totally misaligned. I had like my value system and the company value system was like no longer a match. And so I did the thing that nobody does. And I just jumped. I jumped from there and opened up my business. Most people start to build a business on the side, and I just absolutely not. I don't do anything the way that people do things, Eileen. I always do it my own way, to sometimes to my excitement and then also to my detriment. And so that's what I did. I decided that I'm going to put, if I was to open something tomorrow, what would I do? Well, coaching is my passion.
All or nothing.
All or nothing. Fire into the, or frying pan into the fire, as I like to say it. And that's what I did. I took my skill set. I took the fact that I was a go-to behind closed doors for leaders who would come to me to advise, not just on business, but also life, not just on the career, but bigger things. And so I took that, and then off I went. And obviously, kind of here I am now, 6 years on, 3 businesses in, and it's been a big journey.
Amazing. And I think you are now also working with other people. You've got partners
Yes.
in crime.
partners in businesses, co-founders in businesses, and then obviously my own business. And to be fair, the value system and everything that runs through them all is the same. It's really to help transmute pain. It's really to help people live their limitless potential. Because even though on paper in those days I looked like I had it figured and all sorted out, I was inside, I wasn't living. I wasn't alive. And when you become alive, when you can be on the other side of that, and when you can see all that you've missed out, all you want to do is help other people get there quicker, other people to be able to do the same. And I help that whether it be within a business, with their businesses, or I help that with people training to do the same thing, because all roads lead to the same thing, liberation. And if people can feel free, if people can feel that sense of freedom and not entrapment or being caged by their thoughts, by their feelings, by their actions every single day, which is basically what I was doing. You know, I was in a lot of pain. I had a lot of symptoms. I was ill all the time. I was up Harley Street pretty much every other week to another doctor because I kept being ill with the thing, but nothing was wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with me.
It was all.
It was all up here. It was this because I wasn't listening to my emotions. I wasn't answering the call. I wasn't being aligned, and I kept pushing through because we're taught, aren't we, to push through. And that's what I did, and that's why, you know, I ended up breaking, literally breaking. And so I thank that period of time where I broke, because if I didn't break, I couldn't remend, and I wouldn't understand that I could rebuild on completely different territory. So yeah, if I can help anyone do that, that's essentially what I'm here for.
It's fascinating, especially that jump from the security, the safety and security net, to I'm going to now jump to this and get on with it. It's all or nothing. That's really fascinating. And what have you found about your shadow that was at that point when you realized that was stopping you from living your life to the full, both while helping people, also making the best out of it for yourself?
I think the key thing was, because we have many shadows, we have many different shadows. And shadows, just if you're listening, you know, like, what's a shadow? A shadow is literally just a part of us that splintered off at some point in time where it had to, whether it had to for safety, because if we were in survival mode at that time, we might not want to remember that part of us. And it's the personas and the personalities that build up that actually we really don't want people to see them. I don't want people to see that I can't do X, or I don't want people to see that I don't know, I had a story, I can't articulate myself very well. And so you hide that part of yourself. You stop showing up. You stop showing up in different ways. And when you do show up, you're showing up in other ways that are not to your natural form. And so what you essentially find, and I see this with a lot of my clients at middle life, whether they're leading or whether they're in businesses, they're still not anywhere near their full potential because they're wearing so many different masks. And then they're not able to just be, and they're not able to just show up, and they are showing up, but they're not showing up in the true sense of who they are. And so that showed up for me by me literally masking everything was okay. Everything was okay. I was like very much suppressed, emotionally suppressed, pushing the feelings down every day, smiling, a bit like the Truman Show, smiling, blue skies, sunny outlook, and
Okay.
it wasn't okay. I
Fine.
wasn't okay. I was not okay. And so I made this beautiful safety for everyone else, but the key thing I wasn't doing was making things safe for myself.
Mm.
And those shadows played up in all different ways. And if anyone's again listening, we have the prostitute archetype. The prostitute archetype is exactly what you think. Will overgive, will say yes to everything, will please everyone else before themselves, will, you know, run around and dance to everyone else's value systems. And actually I could see a lot of that playing out in what I was doing. And even though I was very well known for being spoken, speaking my opinion, which absolutely I would, and standing up for truth and people, because that's what my role was, I could have been doing it on a different level or a different scale, but I was actually only doing it, say, like 1/10 of what I could have done, because I was like buried under all these different shadows. So I didn't quite know who I was operating at. I was in victim, so the victim shadow archetype. I was very much, it's okay for them and it's okay for him, and da, 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 and all these excuses And this is all in the background, by the way. This is our subconscious. We don't even know this is happening.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time where I fell into these archetypes, shall we say, meant that I wasn't being true to who I was here to be. So a key part of that journey is healing with that, and actually acknowledging that these shadow archetypes got me to where I was. And actually, they're pretty magnificent. If you can do that by acknowledging them and accepting them, surrendering to them, and saying, actually, you did pretty good. Imagine if we could jump into our lover. Imagine if we could go into our adult. Then now, how could we do this next chapter? And that's where it started to get very exciting for me, because a lot of the time with clients, they're in their child, they're not in their adult. They still haven't worked out. They're still they're not understanding that this is the time to start adulting themselves, because maybe they weren't adulted, or they were neglected or rejected as a child. And actually, I think we shadows are very good at masking all of that.
And that wounded child never really heals in the adulthood unless you stop and learn about the shadow work or look into the core beliefs that are subconscious, because underneath that iceberg from the tip, you see maybe what they're doing and their behavior and so on, but underneath there's all the subconscious stuff, like you say, I'm not good enough, they won't like me, or they will judge me, I'm vulnerable, I'm powerless, and it just doesn't automatically upgrade. Isn't that amazing about the brain? It can do so many things, but it doesn't upgrade once it learns it in the childhood, even though it's really unhelpful. It just kind of keeps it down, but it affects all the behavior, of course, and how we feel about ourselves as well.
Yeah, and I think that one of the key things of my journey certainly was, and is also clients and students, is we are responsible for the upgrade. We are responsible. There is no one else that's going to give that to you. No one else is just going to do it for you. And actually, that's probably one of the hardest lessons. I don't know if you agree, Eileen, but that was my hardest lesson. It was like, what? Like, it sounds so, when you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous, but like, what? Someone else isn't going to take responsibility for this? And
I've got to do this myself.
you mean I've got to undo all this shit? I've got to deprogram this, but and you don't even know, but subconsciously you're arguing with yourself all day long about well, I don't know why I should have to deprogram. It wasn't me that put it there, and it's that person's fault, and it's blame, and it's this, and it's
Exactly.
and you're literally
Easy to
wasting.
blame others, isn't it? Oh, they did this to me.
This happened, that happened, that shouldn't have happened, and this shouldn't have, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and it's all the time you do that, you are robbing yourself of life. And that is actually the key thing. Like, everything else is just stories, it's just mirage illusions, it's just make believe. The truth is, how long you're going to do that before you realize you're retiring, and you've just wasted that period of time in your life where you could have actively participated and done something about it. And so that's the part. It's responsibility. It's owning that, taking that, even if all these other stories are true, it's actually irrelevant. It's like, what you're going to do next.
Yeah. It's your job now, because you're not that helpless child anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you do CBT, Eileen, and like so I had CBT when I was, I would probably say a decade ago. And I had a real OCD, and the OCD was coming from my need to control, and the control was coming from my lack of safety, and my lack of safety was coming from childhood.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had no idea that this again, the iceberg was just my symptoms, right, of things, but underneath it was very much linked back to, like, whatever, 35 years ago. And that, like, track back, that's why I do this work. It's like, you've got to find out your root system, you've got to find out what the cause is. Like, it's all great managing symptoms up this level, but if you're not getting to the root and understanding, you may never fully understand yourself, accept yourself, and be okay with yourself. And so that was a massive journey for me. Obviously, I've done many things since then and trained in many modalities, because each different thing gives you different access, I believe, to different parts of your subconscious.
Yes, I love that. You can have so many different perspectives. They're all going down to the same similar places. It is to teach you, different types of awareness.
Yes.
And that, for example, one of the things I love about EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is that it also taps into brain self-healing power
Hmm.
that you don't, because in one side, on the realistic, the rational part of your brain, you know that it's all in the past and it's all over and so on. But the emotional part is not letting it go, still trying to keep you safe, even though it's unhelpful for you. So with EMDR, you start a process that actually the brain then starts doing that connection, that neural connection. So you find new solutions to old problems. And that's all, the work that we all do is all about rewiring, isn't it? Making new connections in order to find um, new solutions to old issues that are not serving you. So I love that. Yeah, I'm like you as well. I love learning all the different modalities, and I love what I see with the shadow work as well. It's really fascinating too, and I think it's a part of your just bringing you the subject to your diploma course, which absolutely it covers so many areas, right? You cover shadow work, I think you cover family.
Family constellations. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, interesting enough, after a few years of doing this, I'd always get people say to me, how do I do what you do? And the funny thing was, I've trained, I've retrained, I've been on many different programs and courses. And the one thing that I kept coming home to was the real route to unlocking people isn't just cognitive. It isn't just the brain, as you know. It's also connecting the brain with other bits of muscle memory and tissue and more somatics. So when people were asking me how they could train in what I trained, I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be cool to train them in something that actually works as opposed to one modality, just, like kind of cognitive neural pathways, which is brilliant. But actually, what about something that will give sustainable, real transformational change? And so went ahead and built a diploma which is about emotional and behavioral psychology, because the two are linked. And it was very much based on the fact that we used to believe that our thoughts came first. Our thoughts came first, then we had actions, then it was behaviors, and then that kind of cemented in our loops. But actually, it's not true. Our emotions come first. The emotion then creates a thought, then creates the action, then locks in a behavior. So if we don't deal with our primary root cause, which is the emotion, then we may never seek to have the change. So the diploma went on to look at, not just, it wasn't just about the psychology, it was also about the emotional psychology. And so we look at the family dynamics and the roles that we play, and we look at shadow archetypes, but we also look at the memories that we store in our muscles and the feelings that we have. So we go through emotional intelligence. We look at manifestation and how we manifest what we want, because lots of people come to coaching to get the life that they seek. And none of this was trained anywhere. And the key part of our diploma also is trauma informed, because there isn't a client that I have now sat with, even before these days, even in my leadership role, that had not experienced trauma as to why it was probably showing up for them, and them not being able to do what they wanted to do, speak how they wanted to speak, go for the promotion, whatever it was, whatever that, belief they'd locked in from that trauma at whatever age, it was now very much showing up for them. And what I found was a lot of coaches were like dancing around the elephant in the room because they didn't have a skill set.
Yeah, that's right. So you actually treat the symptom up here, oh, I can't speak. Um, I can't do public speaking. Okay, then I'm going to show you how you can build confidence and stand in front of the audience. Actually, where does that come from? Where let's look when you were in the class, 8 years old, and you spoke out about something, you answered the teacher, and the teacher told you to sit down, your answer is wrong, how dare you, or something, or
Yes.
and your friends laughed at you. That's it. It's locked. You're traumatized.
You're
And
traumatized, and the work that this is the work, and you know this because you work similarly as well. It is about this because I remember having the same thing, and I did a talk in front of 300 people, and I remember my voice starting to like close. Of course, I was nervous, fearful, whatever. Most people are. That's totally normal and natural. There was just something going on, and my body was shaking. And so anyway, I got through the event, and it was fine. And it actually wasn't until I worked out, like I literally went to the emotion, to the feeling, to the shake, and got really deep beneath it. And it was because of, at the age of 13, I was told to be quiet, and then I was told to sit down, and because my opinion wasn't relevant, and it was shameful. It was done in front of my cousins, and who I regarded, as my, like, really well. And it was done in such a way that it had left an imprint on me. And without that knowledge, I absolutely don't think I'd have broke through. Well, I know it for a fact because many people were like, well, why don't we do this? And why don't you do that? And it's just surface level. It's just moving the symptom around, turning it into another symptom.
yeah, exactly. So sometimes I think about with some therapists and also some coaches, when they look at, oh, what's going on? Okay, let's look at it and how we can get you to where you want to be. If you're actually doing that without really going to the core of the problem, it's kind of like putting a
Band-aid on.
bandage on a wound that has got infection underneath, and you're not scooping up that infection, cleaning that wound, so it just keeps getting infected.
And it keeps, can I just say, that is such a good analogy, because not only does it keep getting infected, but a bit like my symptoms are showing up in illness.
Yeah,
That is your infection. So it's not really an infection,
yeah.
but these are your things that keep, because the band-aids keep getting slapped on, or actually sometimes not even band-aid, you're not even aware. And so it's so important to go to a practitioner that understands a cognitive and somatic connection 100%, because
Holistically.
holistically, as a human being, as a whole person that has knowledge about psychology, understands how the brain works and formed, and maybe some of the traits and personalities that you're displaying now and where they root back to, and being able to really talk to you about that in a safe way, because one of the key things is, coaching is not regulated. And I always say to our students that we're teaching you about the brain here, and the brain is can be like a landmine. Like,
Yeah,
if you don't know what you're stepping on, these
absolutely.
could be grenades going off. So it's safety first always, but being intuitive enough to be able to track it back somewhere so that you can create like phenomenal change in an individual. And so it's so important that we have people who are managing those landscapes and are trained, because our brain is an incredibly powerful resource, and should be treated with the utmost respect.
And you're so right about that, opening up that Pandora's box. If you are not sure of what you're doing, you can cause more damage
Mm-hmm.
than actually helping people heal. If you're helping them open up something that they have been keeping closed for so many years because it's too painful, and then you want to help them open it and process it. But if you are not sure how to do that, how to help them process it, then you can cause a lot of pain and
And it
damage.
requires skill. This is a skill.
Yeah.
This is why it's a profession. It's like, requires a level of mastery, and you have to be able to be comfortable and confident with that. Otherwise, like you say, the repercussions are that the other person, doesn't feel that kind of level of safety. And it's interesting because you said earlier about perfectionism, and I'm just thinking of an amazing client where her perfectionism, she had gone to, I think, 4 other people before me. She was a businesswoman, and she was actually finding that her perfectionism was really holding her back from getting things done, like getting things done. and things were taking forever, and it would have to be perfect, and then it wouldn't go out to the world, and then nobody would see it. And then it was
Lots of procrastination by the sounds of it.
procrastination galore, stories galore, like you name it. There was but there's nothing that I haven't seen. So when we tracked back, now she'd been to 4 other people, say, before, and they were like helping out, get motivated, take action, here's accountability, here's a list, here's a thing, here's a... And she was like, I think there's something wrong with me now, because nobody can seem to motivate me, accountability doesn't work. And there was just something in this person, because normally, you know, I would look at like how much help they had before, and actually we got to the root of it within 10 minutes of our first call.
If perfectionism is getting in the way of you living your life to the full, then check out my new book, Perfectly Imperfect: Cultivating Your Self-Worth in a Demanding World. It's based on cognitive behavioral principles and can help you work on yourself.
And the root was, as a child, she had been berated for spelling mistakes and for, you know, not getting it right. So rightness was a big story for her. It had to be right. Oh God, it had to be right. And I feel chills talking about this because it was quite emotional. And within that short amount of time, we found out exactly where it came from. And the next few sessions were not about anything, weren't about accountability and get it. It was actually about going back. It was actually about inner child healing. It was actually all around what she needed now and what the, you know, her little self needed. It was around the stories of today and what, like, being an adult and now understanding that that's all fiction, and actually being okay with it being wrong, and actually going, I'm quite unorthodox in my approach, Eileen. And so we went to the opposite extremes, to the point where it was like irrelevant, right? It was just complete. It was just like, there is no right, there is no wrong. It just is. Imagine a world where there is no right, it just is. It literally just is a neutrality.
Yeah.
Like, and so, but previously had people been dancing around giving her checklists. I'll check in with you Monday and it will stop. And I knew this because I'd seen it like 100 times before with clients. It's never the thing, is it? It's always, it's the symptoms are just showing you there's something deeper going on inside. And so most people's perfectionism just could come from examples like that. But then you get people, perfectionism goes the other way, where they had none of the above, but because they had none of the above, they didn't feel safe. So now they're trying to control, like, give themselves safety in their adulthood. And that perfectionism actually is a control mechanism to help them feel safe now, because they didn't get that structure or gain what they needed, obviously, at that period of time. So actually it can work both ways.
Yes. And have you experienced perfectionism before you kind of gained so much awareness into yourself?
Yeah.
How did that work for you and people around you, do you think? How was that?
My standards, to be really clear, my standards still are really high.
Yeah. And
Difference
that's good.
between,
That's
the difference between them now versus then was I would hang myself with them before. You know, if it didn't work out, there would be a lot of inner dialogue going on, a lot of beration, a lot of, you know, could have done it like this, should have done it like that, that's stupid, that's this, that's that. How would that work out for everyone else? Well, as much as I'd like to think it, I held it back from everyone else because I just kept it inbound. I projected it back on me. So actually it was even worse. It was like,
it was self-imposed.
yes. And it was very much, so even though my team knew that I had high standards, I would then almost take the rap for them as well, because then I would go into a whole blame of me, blame on it not being right, blame on me maybe not giving directions enough, even if I had. So the finger pointing would always come back to me, and that's how perfectionism impacted me. And it impacted me massively, massively. I would always want things to be right. I would always want things to be perfect. It would mean that things would take me a lot longer than most people. And so I then built that reputation. And then when you build a reputation, it's like even more.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where, you know, like a breaking point, because you don't want people to see that you're then not perfect and that you are vulnerable. because that shows signs of levels of weakness, which I believe none of the above now. These are all beliefs that I had upholding my, perfectionism. And I don't get triggered anymore. It's really interesting. So when we first opened up and you'll find this funny, Eileen, when we first did our diploma, there's so many spelling mistakes. And so many. I mean, I don't know, like it's a diploma, there's a lot of literature. And so that would have, back in the day, that would have absolutely, oh my God, I would have been like that. Because what I understood and what we teach here with shadow work is your judgment of other spelling mistakes is just a judgment and mirror back at yourself of your own projections of yourself. So what? So what if there's what judgment are you making on that person about that spelling mistake? Find out what that judgment is, and then find out how you're judging yourself on the same thing. So actually, we use these as mechanisms to teach. It was phenomenal because people are like, oh my God, I didn't realize that I would judge that in such a way. And I didn't realize that I'd made a story up about that person being X, Y, and Z if they did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So it was really fundamentally, actually, we used it as a learning piece. But now it's I would rather spend my time helping people and making spelling mistakes than sitting there with my autocorrect getting all that right. I'm here to make things move. I'm not here to sit here spelling. I wasn't born to do that. The perfection is a piece, but you still have to be careful, right? You still have to be careful if you're falling back into that trait or that I'm going to say even trap, because it is just an illusion. It's something that we build up in our own heads. It's a story, and everyone's version of perfection looks totally different, doesn't it? Which is why we make so many judgments. So you still
show up in it does come up sometimes. It does.
Yeah, absolutely. But rather than hate it and
are you sure? Are you sure that's ready? Are you sure you want to hit that send button? Are you sure you're uploading this on the website? Are you sure it's done? It's like you have to really be aware of that inner voice going, are you sure? Is it really done? Or can there be another mistake? Do you want to read it again? Nope, it's done.
And also, that's a trust piece. That's it. What I learned was it's trust. So if I trusted that everything was going to be okay, and if I trusted that I was enough, and if I trusted everything I did was enough, why do I need to double check? Now, you might say, because that would be crazy not to double check. I'm not saying don't double check, but I don't triple check. I don't quadruple check. I don't get someone to check the check. Because whilst that's happening, I'm moving on with life. And that's the thing. People are, I have people that come to me and their project's taking X to lift off because they're just stuck in this cycle of check. And it's like, no. In my world, we just get on. We move forward. We do it. We learn as we go on. We trial and error. And the more you do that, the more successful you are, because you've got to be prepared. And this is what perfectionists won't like. You've got to be prepared to fail. And actually, the more successful you are, the more you'll fail. If you say to yourself, I'm going to fail twice as much, you'll become so much more successful. And perfectionists don't like that. Their ego now is probably picking up saying, well, that's not true. It's the perfectionist that gets there.
I'm not perfectionist. I'm not going to be
I won't be successful.
Exactly. There's that story, isn't there? In order to be successful, I have to be a perfectionist. Everything has to be perfect. But there's also another story that I hear sometimes from my clients saying, I never thought I was a perfectionist. I never thought I would identify myself. I thought perfectionists were the perfect people with all the success, with beautiful lives, beautiful wives, husbands, or houses that when you look at them, they're driving the best cars. They must be perfectionists because they are living perfect life. Yeah. So there's also the story that people don't identify themselves as being perfectionists, which I quite often see, because they think the story is if you have the perfect life, it's because you have been a perfectionist to get the perfect success, to have the perfect life.
Yeah, and I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who I actually coach are miserable. And I can say a lot of those people who So, and that's not my definition of
I think,
success. So
yeah.
I think the key thing here is define your version of success. If your version of success is being crippled by having to do things in a certain way you've got so many terms and conditions with yourself that you are disabling yourself from moving. It's really interesting. I just did a whole thing on inertia, the feeling of inertia, like stillness, no movement, no momentum. And that's usually called from perfectionism. There's a direct link because you go into stagnancy, you don't move. You're like, oh my God, now I can't, I'm frozen now. I don't know which way to go, because if it's not going to be up here, what's the point? So then people just stop moving. And so that's not very successful.
And
And
also, yeah, sorry.
no, go for it, go for it.
Because there is also that I have to be successful or all else is a failure. So there isn't a bit of success. It's either success or if I'm failing, then either or, then life is horrible. I'm a failure.
Yeah. But I think the key way to look at this is, what if you redefine first of all what your version is. So if it is being happy, being motivated, being driven, all these like key things, then the key thing that you're saying is going to help you get there is going to never help you get there. Because even when you get there, which is what happens to a lot of people, they're like, well, I still feel so restricted. I still feel like I've got psychological warfare going on every day. I still feel ill. I still have symptoms. And the reason why you still have symptoms is that actually you're still being driven from those needs. And until you address them, nothing, and I mean nothing, I mean billionaires who sit there, nothing's going to feel successful. So it's not about the pristine house or the pristine car or anything else. It's actually about understanding the root system of where your drivers are, why you're doing what you want to do, and how you want to show up in the world. And most people aren't. They're not, because if you understood your drivers for perfectionism at a really deep rooted level, you might understand that there is another way forward, and it doesn't have to look like that. It's just stories. It's just stories. You can get there any way you want. Imagine being successful any way you want. But the key thing is, you have to go deeper into who you are authentically. That's the thing most people are scared about, to get that.
Yeah. And that you have to be ready to face that.
You have to be ready. Yeah, you have to be ready. But those that are ready are pioneering the way forward. Those that are ready are the ones that are leading. And there is a key bit, very most successful leaders, real successful leaders, it's not about how much they've got in their bank. It's actually about their ability to lead and pioneer a way forward and walk the path that nobody else has walked and take people with them. That's actually success. I have no evidence for this, but I am going to walk ahead anyway. And that's where the pioneers, that's where it all starts to change. And if we believe that there is the first belief has to be that there is a different way. And the second belief is that you actually get to, who knew you got to design it? Then what can you do?
Yeah. Amazing things. Yes, amazing things, because then all the barriers are down that have been holding you
No
back.
barrier to entry anymore.
Yeah, really fantastic. It's just so lovely talking with you. Uh, really, really amazing things that I'm sure everyone has got a lot more knowledge now about self and where some of the limitations are coming from. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Suzie, for coming today and
I
joining
love it.
us and explaining about your journey and your stories. They were really inspirational. Thank you for sharing them with us.
Thank you for having me, Eileen.
Thank you for joining us in I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave stars and a review. Help me spread the word by sharing this with your friends and family. My practical manual, Transformation Through the Power of Quotes, will help you or someone you know get through tough times and feel happier. It is now available on Amazon paperback and Kindle. You can also check out our website, mindandmood.co.uk. Thank you again, and remember, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Bye for now.